a little while since I did a quick tip on this channel, and today I thought I'd look at a little bit of sound design. Now, nothing too hard. We're talking about making some hi-hats out of just about any synth that you've got. This is a really simple technique that I use quite often within my tracks, just to add a little bit of extra texture within there. And once you kind of learn it, you can kind of twist it and tweak it to make it really unique. So for this example, I've got a really simple project going on here. I've got a kick and a clap, an open hat, and a bass loop. It's really simple so far, but I want to use this kind of white noise hats technique to kind of create an extra texture within there, give it a bit more movement. Now you can do this with just about any synth that can create white noise, and I'm going to use Operator within Ableton. I really like this synth. It's nice and simple to use, and I get the results out of it quite quickly. But as I say, any synth can create white noise. And obviously to get any kind of sound out of this synth, we need some MIDI notes. So I've already created a MIDI clip within here. This is the hi-hat groove, nothing too crazy going on within here, and it's all just notes on C4. Because it's white noise, you don't need to worry about the key of it so much. It doesn't have to be in the same key as your project, but I would probably play it in the upper octave. So I've gone for C4 here, but you'll kind of hear it as you start playing white noise as to what kind of pitch you want it to be. As I say, quite a simple pattern going on within here, and I've also got a groove going on. So I've got a little bit of swing going on, the MPC 16 swing, and let's just solo that to hear what it sounds like straight out of the box. So Operator is just playing its default patch, which is a sine wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that over to white noise, or noise white as it's called within here. So we're getting kind of bursts of white noise there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sustain down. This already gives us a kind of plucky kind of sound. And I'm also going to decrease the decay as well. So as you can hear there, we're almost getting that kind of hi-hat kind of sound by decreasing that decay. As I say, this tip isn't that hard, but now we can go ahead and tweak it and make it a little bit more interesting. For example, we could increase the attack and make it a little bit more like a shaker. But let's keep it with the hat thing. So I'm going to decrease that attack back down to 0 again. Now, because this is a hat, we don't actually need those bottom frequencies. So I'm actually going to get an EQ8 in there, an EQ. I'm just going to get rid of some of those bottom frequencies. There we go. That should sit in the mix a little bit better. Let's hear it with everything else. So that's already sounding quite cool in the mix. What we can do now is adjust the decay and the release to change the length of that hi-hat. Okay, so let's take it on a step further and start automating that decay. Now this is where you can create some really interesting effects where you get this kind of evolving hi-hat over time. And there's two ways that I like to do this. You can either do it the manual way or the automatic way. The manual way, you get the most control. So let's start off with that. I'm going to right click on the decay here and go to show automation. And let's start drawing in some automation for these notes. For example, let's make this first note a bit longer. So I'm going to put some points within here and see how it sounds. And let's duplicate that across as well. And obviously we can get it going over time as well. So let's put a little ramp in here. And we can duplicate that across again. As you can see there, really dead simple to create an interesting rhythmic effect. Let's delete this and try something different. Let's try doing something over 2 bars. So I'm going to put a point in at the start of the 2 bars and a point in at the end of the 2 bars, then one in maybe at the middle here, and I'm going to raise it up to about here. So you can hear there, it's just kind of fading in and out. I could put a little bit of curve on here maybe to make it a little bit more dramatic at the end. And again, you could just duplicate this across the whole thing if you wanted to. So that's the first way of doing it. The second way of doing it is automatically, and this is where you can create a more random kind of effect, something a little bit more interesting that evolves over time. So I'm going to delete this automation on here. And let's jump into the browser, and I'm going to use one of my favorite effects within Ableton, the LFO. I love this LFO effect. Basically, it allows you to add an LFO to anything. Now, usually within a synth, you do actually have an LFO. Unfortunately, what I want to do is I want to map that LFO to the decay, and I can't do it within here. It's just not available within this synth. So I'm actually going to use this outside LFO to do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click map on the LFO, and I'm going to click on the decay. You can see it's already going crazy. I don't want it going up and down that much. For example, I don't want it going all the way down to 0 and then all the way up to the top. Just not what I want. So I'm going to take the depth down. There you go. You can see it's not quite doing as much there. And I want it to start more around the 800 millisecond mark. So I'm going to use the offset just to increase that. Let's see how that sounds. So as you can hear there, it's just slightly adjusting that decay all of the time. So every single hit is slightly different. It gives that kind of, well, I hate to say it, but almost analog kind of feel. Let's hear that in the mix. And again, it's one of these things that you can have a bit of fun with. You can have a play around with all the different parameters within the LFO to create something a bit more interesting. For example, I have it on the free rate at the moment, but we could sync it to the Doors tempo. So that's actually doing the LFO cycle over 1 bar, which does have a kind of rhythmic kind of effect, and something we were creating in the manual method. Obviously, with the manual method, you have more ability to decide exactly when you want it to get longer and when you want it to be shorter. But the LFO can really add some really interesting stuff to it. So there you go. I did say it was going to be a really quick tip, a really simple sound design thing that you can really have a lot of fun with. And generally that's what I usually do. I kind of load these things up and just play around with them, see what I come up with. And sometimes you can create some really interesting stuff. That's kind of the basics of it. And obviously you can take it off in any direction that you want to by kind of changing any one of those parameters. You can create something really interesting and new. I tend to use this within my mix to kind of add an extra texture within my drums, just something a little bit more unpredictable, sometimes higher in the mix, sometimes lower in the mix, but it really does work quite well. And as I say, any one of those parameters can create something new and interesting. So just have fun with it.
Right now, I'm gonna bring it back to the funk.